This is the artificial intelligence voice of Dr. Andrew Huberman, narrating this pod-slice summary of the Huberman Lab podcast. In this podcast episode, Dr. Andrew Huberman discusses the scientific benefits of a specific form of journaling for mental and physical health. Backed by over 200 peer-reviewed studies, this just journaling technique has shown significant impact in improving mental and physical health, lowering anxiety, enhancing sleep, boosting immunity against common illnesses, and reducing the symptoms of autoimmune disorders like arthritis and lupus. A particular technique in question is not widely known outside the field of psychology and psychiatry. Dr. Huberman learned about it from his colleague, Dr. David Spiegel, following which he reviewed the primary research and was astounded by its positive potential. This particular journaling method's main advantage is that it requires a relatively small amount of time. It can be undertaken across 1 week or 1 month, and the positive effects would still be long-lasting. Initially researched by Dr. James Pennebaker, professor of psychology, the method begins by writing about the most traumatic and difficult experiences of one's life for 15 to 30 minutes. The important aspects of the method include not stopping to write for the entire duration, not focusing on correct grammar, spelling, and maintaining privacy during the process. Dr. Pennebaker's research started in the mid-1980s, with his first published manuscript appearing in 1986. The study consisted of inviting undergraduate students to write about their most difficult life experience for a set amount of time, and they were asked not to pause at any moment. The results indicated an overall improvement in mental and physical health. However, not just limited to pen and paper, subsequent studies have shown that the same positive effects can be achieved through any form of writing, including typing on a word processor. What matters most is the real-time exploration and release of thoughts and emotions related to significant negative life experiences. To conclude, this concentrated and intensive style of journaling has been scientifically shown to contribute to improved mental and physical health and overall well-being by digging into and genuinely expressing your deeply rooted emotions about a personal traumatic experience. You can reap lasting health benefits. The promise of these transformative effects makes this form of journaling a novel tool in promoting health and wellness. A podcast episode delves deeper into the specific form of journaling that Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist, discusses, developed initially by Dr. James Pennebaker. The technique involves writing about the most traumatic and difficult experiences of one's life for 15 to 30 minutes continuously, with an emphasis on leaving grammar, spelling aside, and just focusing on uninhibited expression. This practice invites you to create a link between your negative experiences and their impact on your life trajectory. It is pointed out that even if one has not had a traumatic experience per se, writing about major stressors or conflicts can yield similar benefits. Dr. Huberman emphasizes the importance of creating a buffer period after each writing session to allow subjects to gather themselves emotionally and mentally. The challenge and intensity of this exercise are discussed, and Huberman acknowledges that the thought of intentional, focused reflection on one's most painful experiences can feel daunting. However, the benefit of this form of journaling lies in its ability to unearth and process buried narratives and emotions within our nervous system. He clarifies that when he refers to trauma, it is based on the definition provided by psychiatrist Dr. Paul Conti. Any experience that modifies our brain and neural circuitry so that we do not function as well emotionally, behaviorally, or cognitively going forward from that experience. This allows us to understand that not every negative experience constitutes trauma, but everyone, by virtue of living, faces stressors. Another significant point he highlights is that participants tend to split into low expressors and high expressors. Importantly, this distinction does not correlate with introversion and extroversion. Instead, these categories relate to how much emotion and depth the subjects express during their journaling. Low expressors tend to recount their experiences in a somewhat detached manner, while high expressors navigate their emotions deeply and intensely. These differences, however, do not affect the overall benefits derived from this therapeutic method. To be effective, one has to write about the same traumatizing experience 4 times, either daily or weekly. Some people may feel averse to the idea of repeatedly delving into a distressing experience, but it's important to remember the science-backed positive shifts this type of journaling can engender in mental and physical health. This is not an ongoing practice, but a short-term, albeit intense, cognitive intervention designed to reap long-term benefits. But therefore, while this journaling practice intentionally taps into our most difficult experiences, the goal is to aid personal growth and well-being by directly confronting and processing our buried narratives and emotions. That podcast continues diving into the intricate differences between the low expressors and the high expressors. It's pointed out that despite the distinct patterns of emotional and physiological response each group exhibits during the 4-session journaling process, the long-term benefits are anticipated to be the same for everyone involved. Interestingly, the low expressors who initially exhibit less distress and a more detached, less emotional recounting of their experiences become more distressed as the writing exercise progresses from day 2 to 4. In contrast, the high expressors who express deep emotion and distress during their first session experience a more dramatic decrease in their distress levels as they progress. Emphasizing that everyone naturally falls into one of these groups, the podcast elucidates that the most effective journaling style is the one that comes naturally to the individual. Both groups, regardless of their initial distress levels or their depth of emotional expression, report significantly less distress and baseline stress levels 3 weeks, 3 months, and even years after initiating the journaling protocol. The podcast then transitions to focus on Pennebaker's study on natural emotion vocabularies as windows on stress and well-being, engaging with how our choice of language and vocabulary can impact our emotional states. The study finds that people with a broader knowledge of negative emotion words tend to exhibit higher levels of anxiety and depression, while those who regularly use more positive emotion words in their everyday speech and writing exhibit more positive emotions. Despite these findings, when performing this therapeutic journaling, participants are advised not to overanalyze their wording. Instead, they should allow their writing to flow naturally, capturing their raw thoughts and emotions. Later, a week or more after the completion of the 4 sessions, individuals can review their entries and compare the usage of negative and positive words in each one. Another key instruction that the participants are given before they begin writing is to include 3 things in their writing: facts, emotions felt at the time of the experience and those felt now, and any links that come to mind between the negative experience and things that are happening now, in the past, or future plans. That protocol states that these 3 factors are crucial for an effective emotional resolution and decoding of the traumatic or stressful event. The overarching goal behind prescribing this protocol is helping the individual through their past traumatic or stressful experiences, enabling them to rewire their neural connections, achieving tangible benefits such as reduced anxiety, improved mood, improved sleep, and improved immune function. A podcast now dives deeper into scientific studies that analyze how the writing exercise can create profound shifts in both mental and physical health. It highlights a critical study that investigates how writing about traumatic or distressful experiences could affect one's immune system. Remarkably, this study discovered that people who partook in this writing protocol experienced greater activation of their immune response. The study involved frequent blood tests, precisely 15 weeks before and 6 weeks into the writing exercise, allowing the researchers to monitor subjects' overall health throughout the process. A fascinating finding from the study results. High disclosures, people who disclosed a lot about their traumatic or stressful experiences in their writing. So a higher degree of immune activation compared to those who weren't as expressive about their experiences. Embedded in the study is the notion of therapeutic journaling offering potentially extensive changes in our bodily functions. The podcast takes time to explain the role the immune system plays in this. T lymphocytes, sometimes referred to as white blood cells, are crucial components of our immune system. They're produced in our bone marrow and mature in a structure called the thymus, which is nestled behind your sternum. White blood cells play a pivotal role in fending off infections, bacterial, viral, or even fungal. The study's implications are impactful. It points towards a direct link between emotional experiences shaped in the course of the writing exercise and improved immune responses. A connection between an abstract human experience such as emotion and a concrete physiological function of the immune system is shown to exist. This offers invaluable insights into how humans can modify their physical health through engaging with emotional trauma in structured and systematic ways. The podcast further discusses how people suffering from chronic anxiety, insomnia, arthritis, and even conditions like lupus and fibromyalgia have experienced notable symptom relief after embarking on this therapeutic journaling practice. However, it provides a realistic perspective, stating that these protocols are not a total cure, but they offer significant long-lasting relief. By articulating their emotional experiences, individuals can evidently influence their physiological states in measurable ways and can result in reduced anxiety, improved mood, improved sleep, and better immune function. This discussion pivots on a profound discovery. A cultural phenomenon such as writing has the power to elicit transformative changes in our physiology and overall well-being. So let's delve further into instances where this powerful conduit was implemented and the kind of ramifications it might have on our understanding of human health. A podcast journeys into the fascinating field of psychoneuroimmunology, the scientific investigation of mind-body connection, particularly focusing on how emotional experiences can shape physiological responses to subsequent events. Over the past decade, scientific and medical communities have increasingly accepted the deep cross-links between our mental states and physical health. A significant example of this bridging is the act of therapeutic journaling, expressing emotional experiences through writing. The podcast features the work of researchers like Dr. James Pennebaker, who explored the impact of journaling through robust experimental protocols. These studies were based on the subject's own experiences with stress or trauma and their reflection thereof. This investigation was propelled not just out of curiosity, but was rooted in Pennebaker's own experiences with severe asthma and his understanding of its complex interlinked triggers. When you revisit a traumatic event through writing, you dive deeper into its context, the feelings it elicited then, and its implications now. The podcast clarifies how therapeutic journaling can bring about notable shifts in the subjects, such as decreased stress and improved mental and physical health. The notion of neuroplasticity, or our brain's ability to change in response to experiences, comes into play. The brain essentially is a predictive machine. It makes educated guesses about future events based on past experiences. The detailed recollection during journaling helps the brain refine its predictive abilities. It reshapes the trauma, resulting in improved responses to such events in the future. Interestingly, neuroimaging studies have shown that recounting traumatic events initially ramps up activity in brain sections called subcortical structures. However, iterative revisiting of these narratives through the structured framework of journaling gradually diminishes this response while increasing coherent narrative structures. Thus, therapeutic journaling appears to engage our cognitive mechanisms, their predictive machinery, and emotional systems optimally to reshape our immune and other bodily systems in beneficial ways. A podcast also highlights certain characteristics of traumatic experiences, including the reduced activation of the prefrontal cortex. The region responsible for planning and self-concept of identity, this region is less active during distressing recounts. However, revisiting these events through structured writing gradually normalizes this imbalance. The complexity of the mind-body connection is beautifully encapsulated in this discussion, accentuating how structured narratives can be potent tools for holistic healing. But then, while the podcast underlines therapeutic journaling as a structured means of stress and trauma processing, this segment focuses on the underlying brain mechanisms that aid with this beneficial transformation. It explores the dichotomy between traumatic stress and the counterintuitive relief encountered through the discomforting recall of stress during subsequent writing bouts. Initially, traumatic experiences result in reduced prefrontal cortex activation, phenomenon also noted during distressing recounts. Yet gradually recounting these events through structured writing leads to increased prefrontal cortex activation. Specifically, the podcast cites the recalling of traumatic events that trigger high emotional responses as a neuroplasticity catalyst for prefrontal cortex changes. Neuroplasticity The term referring to the brain's ability to change usually occurs in states of heightened emotions during periods of duress, stress, or trauma, creating a need for rewiring. An interesting resonance is found in how the brain maps trauma. Traumatic episodes lead to a disruption of coherent narrative structuring due to decreased prefrontal cortex activity, causing confusion over traumatic happenings and their implications. By contrast, truth-telling, ensuring a detailed narrative of the traumatic event, results in enhanced prefrontal cortex activity in the brain. This activity is not momentary, rather, it results in sustained neuroplasticity changes in prefrontal cortical structures, crucial for generating coherent narratives and regulating subcortical structures activity. The resultant understanding of the trauma, its emotional consequences, roles, and responsibilities encourages an enhanced capacity of the prefrontal cortex to control the impact of these subcortical structures. A podcast builds on this idea by observing brain stimulation study, where participants took a die rolling game. In the study, Increasing Honesty in Humans with Non-Invasive Brain Stimulation, Artificial Dishonest Scenarios reported a 68 successful match, suggesting a modest level of dishonesty. However, when prefrontal cortex activation was stimulated non-invasively, the truthful match response returned to an expected 50. This stimulation led to a persistent and truthful representation of reality, attributing back to enhanced prefrontal cortex activation. This intriguing discussion seamlessly continues the exploration into the mind-body connection, focusing on how trauma and honesty interact in relation to brain activity. The importance of journaling or truth-telling is underscored, emphasizing that it offers a path towards orchestrating beneficial changes in the brain, thus a better control over one's emotional responses to traumatic events. According to Dr. Andrew Huberman, when people truthfully report an experience, even a traumatic one, the repeated activation of the prefrontal cortex during this recounting creates a more coherent understanding of that traumatic event. This enhances the prefrontal cortex's capacity to control the body's responses to stress. The brain and body connect through the nervous system, allowing the prefrontal cortex to understand and control our autonomic nervous system responses. This can potentially reduce anxiety, improve sleep, and encounter fewer insomnia episodes. In illustrating this concept, Dr. Huberman clarified how the nervous system directly communicates with our immune system. Recent studies are emphasizing the connection between the brain, the immune system, psychology, and the nervous system. While it may seem counterintuitive that a mere writing protocol could impact the immune system positively or alleviate symptoms like fibromyalgia, when we start thinking about the prefrontal cortex's versatility, it makes perfect sense. It helps us understand our identity and determine when specific elements within our brain and body should be activated. The writing protocol, pioneered by James Pennebaker, is an effective, simple, and cost-efficient method of dealing with traumatic experiences. This process involves writing about a significant traumatic event for 15-30 minutes, continuously for 4 days, and then revisiting it to identify and circle negative words and square positive words. This process encourages truthful representation of our experiences and seems to aid in neuroplasticity. However, it's crucial to consider personal emotional readiness before embarking on this writing journey, as it requires reopening old wounds for examination. Also, the sharing of these insights should ideally be limited to mental health care professionals to prevent potential trauma to others. In conclusion, the podcast emphasized that this writing protocol could positively affect mental and physical health. Nevertheless, since the process could evoke potent emotional responses, it's essential for people to judge whether they are prepared to handle these emotional states. This writing protocol could be a groundbreaking tactic used for trauma and stress management, helping individuals articulate their experiences in a safe, structured manner, thus creating long-term beneficial changes to their emotional health and resilience. Dr. Andrew Huberman delves deeper into the instructions about how to start the writing protocol that has acquired significant attention due to its proven benefits in mental and physical health. Stressful or even traumatic experiences are part and parcel of everyone's life. Dr. Huberman himself, has identified 2, possibly 3 matters that he would consider writing about. But he's chosen to first address the second most stressful issue to gently introduce himself to the protocol. Adherence to the protocol is critical. The process involves narrating the same event 4 times, not changing the topic midway. Dr. Huberman invites the listeners to try this protocol, assuring them that he himself will follow suit. It is a rarity for an entire podcast to revolve around a singular protocol, but this exception becomes necessary when the said protocol has the potential to bring about long-lasting positive changes. Writing about stressful events for 15, 30 minutes, 4 times with either consecutive days or a week's gap in between appears to be an effective method for healing. The magnitude and reach of its potential benefits make it impossible to overlook. Hence, it is openly shared. Listeners are encouraged to support the podcast and to reach out with questions and recommendations for future episodes. The podcasting team, aware of the diverse interests of their audience, also discusses supplements that could prove beneficial for sleep improvement, hormonal stability, and focus enhancement on multiple platforms. Additionally, the Hub and Lab provides a monthly newsletter, the Neural Network newsletter, which summarizes podcast episodes and provides toolkits for things like neuroplasticity, sleep improvement, dopamine regulation, exercise, and flexibility. With its zero-cost availability and a strict no-share policy regarding personal email addresses, it's a valuable resource for those interested in the science of well-being. One of the core messages from this segment is the importance of an active approach to mental and physical wellness, whether that's adopting the writing protocol, learning from the podcast, or seeking additional support through supplements and other tools. Dr. Huberman's openness to exploring new ways to impact mental and physical health creates a prime example for listeners to follow. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.